Children born in the 21st century are exposed to smartphones, social media, TV, and online content from a young age. While it's important to embrace technology in today's digital era, the time children spend on digital devices has become a growing concern among parents. Hello everyone and welcome to Our Voices. I am Semenyi Shekoye and I'm joined by my co-host Oriani Tangshaka and Ginny Niwa. Today we'll discuss about the challenges of parenting in the digital era. Let's start by sharing our personal experiences. Oriane, I know you have 3 young boys. So do you find it easy when your kids are on their TV show or iPad and they don't bother you, or does it worry you?
Yes, well, definitely our personal experiences, I think they're very similar to mothers on the continent, even though we are in the diaspora. We find that smartphones is something that scares us. We want to know, what is good, what is bad. Smartphones are becoming, addiction concern in Africa, because Africa is the biggest, fastest growing market for smartphones or devices in general. So I know mothers on the continent are also concerned. I think for me, what I try to do is I don't allow my children to be on devices during the week. Monday through Friday, they're not allowed to be on devices. On the weekend, they can do as much as they want, but even when they misbehave, I threaten their entertainment on devices to be taken away.
Yeah, but so, is it only the screen time, or do you also manage the content they consume?
Yes, I manage the amount of screen and what they see, because obviously you want to keep peeping and making sure that what they're watching is appropriate and things like that. But I think what we worry so much as mothers, because we have a very short temper, when a child cries or when a child fuss, is to hand them over our phone to make, as a babysitter. But I think one of the most important thing we want to know is what's the median? How much is good? How much is not so good? Because we also do want them to be up to date with technology and what's going on in the world. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to learning with the children that are between maybe 5 and 15, what's the median there? Even so that younger, we can have a healthy amount of technology for them.
Even kids younger are exposed to too much screen time. So, but Ginny, I know your kids are a little bit grown, teenagers. So what was your experience like?
Well, now I'm embarrassed to talk with this perfection here. Yeah. I wasn't as in control as she was. Their first device, so now they're teenager, but back then, Apple, iPad, everything just came out. And their grandmother gifted my children, each of them, an iPad. So she was proud of giving them, the gift. She was proud to be able to afford it. And then you have the father who's also proud. So I felt like I wasn't in control, and it was something that, the more they were using it, the more
they get addicted.
Yeah.
We'll talk about how they can come out of addiction too later in the show. Well, parenting has never been easy, but parenting in a digital age requires a whole new set of skills, ranging from preventing digital addiction to monitoring online safety. According to UNICEF, globally, a child goes online for the first time every half a second. A research done by the National Institute of Health shows children's heavy reliance on screen media affects their cognitive, linguistic, and social emotional growth. Children and young people are also exposed to hate speech and violent content online, including messages that incite self-harm, according to the United Nations. Parents are therefore faced with the challenge of overseeing device use in the efforts to manage screen time and hopefully protect their children against harmful social media content. On this week's edition of Our Voices, we will explore the new challenges of parenting in the digital age and long-term effects of smartphones on children's development. We will also ask parents and experts on ways to overcome digital parenting struggles.
Well, with the rapid growth of internet access, smartphone, and social media, many parents are becoming stricter with their children in an effort to forestall the adverse effect of excessive screen time on their children's development and overall well-being. Mohammed Yusuf reports from Nairobi, Kenya.
Helen Atieno, 38, a mother of 1, is one of millions of parents who are strict when it comes to entering the vast, uncharted territories of the internet and technology.
When it's the phone, only 1 hour, because she uses the phone
only when the homeworks are given there. But for the television, I can't say the hours because sometimes I'm not in the house. So I think with the television, going to YouTube, maybe she can watch even more than 2 hours.
The World Health Organization recommends no screen time for children under the age of 2 and 1 hour or less for children between the ages of 2 and 5. For children 6 and older, parents are urged to monitor and limit the shows and games they play to keep them safe. Irene Ochieng, a mother of 2, allows her children some screen time for entertainment, schoolwork, and to pass time.
I usually let my children use the internet and phone for 1 or 2 hours. They can watch videos, cartoons, or educational content. Sometimes when their dad is watching the television, they can't watch the same show, so I give them my phone to keep them entertained. I also let them use the phone while cooking, especially if I want to make sure they don't go to bed hungry. It helps keep them busy while I prepare their meals.
As technology advances rapidly, many parents feel that raising kids is becoming more challenging because of social media and smartphones. Health experts warn that too much screen time can cause anxiety, depression, poor mental health, sleep problems, and issues with social and emotional development among children. Some parents notice these adverse effects on their children and within their communities.
Well, the disadvantages of having the internet is it is addictive in that when the child wakes up in the morning, then they tend to, that's the first thing they think about. And there are other things that also need to be done.
I would say children are different. Yeah, for some, the internet is really helpful. They learn a lot, but for some, they become so dull. So I think there should be a balance. There should be a balance between screen time and playing outside and all that. Because when they are outside also interacting with friends, they learn a lot of social skills that they wouldn't learn on the internet.
Studies show that too much screen time can negatively affect children's development, including their communication and problem-solving skills. Even though Atieno's child may have already passed those early stages, Atieno is still very strict and encourages her to study hard for a brighter future. Mohammed Yusuf, VOA News, Nairobi.
Thank you, Mahmoud, for that report. Well, as parents across the globe become aware of the risks of tech addiction, they are organizing themselves to find a solution. One of them is Mothers Against Media Addiction, or MAMA. It's a grassroots movement of parents that was formed to fight social media addiction at home, school, and in the communities. The group believes childhood is being stolen by screen time and tries to recreate a world in which real-life experiences and interaction remain at the heart of healthy childhood. The founder of this movement, Julie Scelfo, joins us from New York to tell us more about MAMA. Ms. Scelfo, thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Definitely, it's a pleasure. So what inspired to start this movement against media addiction? I know that you are a mother of 3. So did you personally encounter any of these challenges?
Absolutely. When my first son was born, there were no iPhones, and Mark Zuckerberg worked at a small company called the Facebook. And by the time my middle son was ready for school, all of the parents in our community had smart devices, and they were photographing their children every day, all the time, and posting things online, which inadvertently taught children that it's normal to put everything online and be online all the time. And now my third son is growing up in the world of TikTok. I don't allow him to use TikTok, but I can't stop him from seeing TikToks because his friends send them to him. Snap has gone to short reels. YouTube used shorter and shorter reels. So what we've seen is a big shift, not only in how many people are using these technologies, but how prevalent they've become in everyone's lives.
Well, just like you have 3 children, and, I've noticed they can be all together, talk a little, then all go back on their cell phone. and, you know, share Snapchats, share a bunch of things, but they talk a little and then they're all on their phone. Do you think that parents are well aware of the consequences of, you know, the children excessive screen time or uncontrolled online presence?
I think, you know, the reason I started Mama wasn't only because of my own children's experience, but I've been a journalist for over 20 years covering youth mental health and, unfortunately, suicide. And what we've seen is a terrible increase in suicide rates, not only among adolescents, but in tweens, which are children as young as 10 years old. So there are direct links to how much time children spend online and their emotional and social health. And we know that what gives children the best social and emotional building blocks for their whole life is real world connections and relationships with other people, friends, and family members. So that's why we started Mama, to help more parents learn about the risks involved with online time. Studies have shown if a child spends more than 3 hours on a device, they are more than twice as likely to develop mental health problems, and no parent wants that for their child.
Okay. It was such a breath of fresh air to see this movement, and I know it's a new movement, and it's a movement that I think should be a global movement, because mothers around the world are really looking forward to something like this to be able to combat this media addiction, technology addiction. And I have actually a few questions, but let me throw in your movement exactly. How are you working to get this momentum going for mothers to know what to do, parents to know what to do in terms of slowing down the addiction?
Just like you said, parents all over the world are ready for things to change. And for too long in the United States, where I live, our lawmakers have been very slow to put any kind of regulations or safeguards in place. You know, we have safeguards in our food supply, we have safeguards in our transportation. Right now, there is nothing preventing these companies from making their products as addictive as possible. And so the way they make their products addictive is by always increasing the intensity of the content that they show to children in the algorithms. So that means they're more and more and more addictive. So at Mama, we're joining together to demand that our lawmakers act and put safeguards in place. It shouldn't be on parents to have to figure this out.
Right, and it has been proven that it's very addictive. Now, let's shift to the parents, because we find ourselves as parents doing the same thing we're telling our children not to do. But yet, we as parents have important things we need to do on the phone. We need to pay bills on the phone. We need to answer calls from work. We need to do a lot of things that are important. Can you give us a tip on what can we do as parents to make sure that the children are not constantly seeing us using these phones? Or what can we tell our children in terms of why we are on it?
You know, you've raised one of the hardest challenges, which is modeling. Our children are going to do whatever they see us do. So I certainly struggle with this in my own home, but I have learned the importance of not always being on my device in front of the children and setting clear boundaries for where and how we use it. For example, parents should never, ever allow their children to take their devices into their rooms alone at night. Make sure they're always stored in a central place. We know this because Meta's own data showed the number of children at age 10, 11, 12, 13 that were still on Instagram at midnight or 2 a.m. on school nights. So, you know, you may think your child's going to go to sleep, but they're not. So modeling is important, making sure they don't take them into their rooms at night. And the third thing, the most important thing, is delay. The longer you can wait to give your children access to social media and the internet, the better it is for their healthy development.
Okay, well noted. Thank you, Julie. We appreciate your input. Julie Scelfo is the founder of Mothers Action Media Addiction. It is now time for a quick break. When we come back, we will also hear from developmental psychologists who specialize on early childhood and digital media. But before we go, we also would like you to share with us your challenges with managing children's screen time. Share your thoughts on social media platforms. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and X, and our handle is at VOA Africa. Use the hashtag VOA Our Voices. We'll be right back.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depends on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Moudou, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
Welcome back. You're watching Our Voices. Today we're talking about how parenting has been affected by technology. We will have a developmental psychologist joining us shortly. But before that, let's hear from African mothers and children on what they feel about their screen time. Our reporter Asma Botmi Clark spoke to Sahene Hartfeld, a 12-year-old, and El Halfeld, mother of 2 girls, and Michelle Simon, mother of 1 in Durban, South Africa. And let's hear why they say in our Your Voice segment.
Most of the time I do listen to my mom when she tells me to get off of the screen, but sometimes she doesn't know that I'm actually on it and I don't tell her. I do know the dangers. When you are on your phone too much, it like brainwashes you and you just forget everything you've learned. It just changes your mindset.
If I do think that parents use it as a babysitting device, yeah. Absolutely, I've done it. Younger, obviously, when my kids were younger and I was busy with my other kids. Yeah, it was easy. We don't all have a babysitter or family to help us out. When my kids were younger, 2, 3, 4 years old, and I had to pet them on a TV because there was no cell phone for them at the time, it was bizarre. The behavior was like more aggressive. No listening to mom or dad, or they were having their own thing, and I didn't like it.
Advantages to exposing your child to the digital world in that they are advanced themselves intellectually as well. But you have to be guarded about what's on the net. And so from a young age, I also taught her how to research properly and said, don't believe everything you read on the internet. Rather go and research legitimate sites that have academic information if you're working on a project. Around 13, I gave her access to a cell phone, but I used to buy the data, so she didn't have just free data to just go on any website and stuff like that. But she was honest about where she'd been and what she was looking at. I think in a day, based on the fact that they get a lot of homework and they need to have some traditional forms of learning, like reading a book, I would say like 1 hour every day is sufficient.
Well, we thank all the mothers and children for sharing their experiences. Although technology has become an unavoidable part of our day-to-day life, many parents still continue to wonder what is the right age to introduce technology to their children and what are the concerns. So, Professor Rachel Barr from Georgetown University is joining us via Zoom. Professor Barr is a developmental psychologist and her work focuses on early childhood and digital media use. Professor Barr, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's good to be here. It's been really interesting to hear all the voices from children and parents.
Yes, definitely. I mean, we heard from different parents and about their concerns and their challenges. So my first question is, why is technology such a challenge for today's parenting? And what is the right age and amount of time to interact with a screen?
Yeah, it's really a big challenge for parents because they have to balance so many things. So many of the parents mentioned this idea of balance. So trying to figure out how to cook meals, how to educate their kids, how to share opportunities so that the kids have technology advantages but are not harmed. So there's a lot of information and also time constraints on parents that make these choices very difficult for them. Yeah. I think the term that one parent used that is really important for us to think about is digital balance. How do we have balance in our own media use as parents, and how do we have balance for our children? And so in terms of thinking about the amount and when and why, the guidelines from the World Health Organization are to wait until children are 2. However, this is almost an impossible rule to follow for parents. We've followed this for many, many years. And the reasons why it's impossible is that we as parents use phones a lot. And also if there's older siblings, then also there's many other constraints around. So if there's a first baby, it's a little easier.
Professor Rachel, so you're talking about balance. What problems do children develop from their relationship with technology when that balance is not respected?
So I think probably the biggest problem can be around language, so developing language, because as mentioned, it's really important for that back and forth for people to have conversations with young children, and sometimes media can interfere, and this is called technoference. But the interference is not just from when children view, but it can also be when our attention is drawn away by our own media use. So if we're using the phone and the phone is in front of our face, then it's hard for children to talk with us. So one of the bigger risks sort of would be around language development.
Professor Barr, one of the children in the Vox Pop said something very scary. She said, "He brainwashes you and you forget everything you learned." How can that adverse be reverted or, changed?
Right. So I think one of the things that was said immediately after by the parent, after that segment, after the 12-year-old said, children need to learn how to use technology. So the mother explained how she taught her child how to look for different content, how to learn how to trust different content, how to sort of figure out when to stop using media, because that's one of the hardest things for all of us, right? How do we put down the phone? How do we turn off the television? And that, I think, is the thing that parents can do really well. Just as that mother explained, she said to her child, okay, these are going to be places that you can look that will be safe, that will be educational. This is the amount of time. This is sort of a rule. We have lots of rules. We have rules about going to sleep. We have rules about meals. We have rules about going to school. And so thinking about the rules around media use as well. And then also having a little bit of a plan can be a way to reduce and reverse some of this, the content brainwashing that the child mentioned.
When I was looking at researchers, I saw that the best time to introduce children to technology is after they turn 2, and to avoid until they are there 2. So tell us, what is the right time to introduce this guidance? How do we teach them, and how can mothers best guide their children into safe use of technology the way you described it?
So what I would actually recommend is a media plan. So the American Academy of Pediatrics has got a website that is a media plan, and you can open it up and sort of what it does is it goes through and it says, what are all of the things that you want your child to do in a day? So you want your child to play, you want them to have some time outside. You want them to have a good amount of sleep. You want them to go to school. You want them to learn and play with others. So thinking about all of those things is then think about what media could be introduced. So you want them to meet all of their needs and then think about media afterwards. Then once you've got that sort of plan, thinking about what could be useful for media, right? And a couple of parents and children talked about this as well. It can be useful for homework. It can be useful for staying in touch with your friends. It can be useful for video chatting and staying in touch with your grandma. So sort of thinking about the reasons why it could be useful. And sometimes it is helpful for parents who are really busy, like a short amount, like 15 minutes could be really helpful while you're doing dinner to have TV for young children. And then how do you turn the media off? So having for yourself and for your child.
Our special thanks goes to Professor Barr, a developmental psychologist and a professor at Georgetown University, and Julie Scelfo, a founder of Mothers Against Media Addiction, or MAMA. It was a great pleasure having you on Our Voices. Be sure to watch Our Voices on the VOA website at voaafrica.com or on our YouTube channel, where you can catch up on the latest episodes and the world's top news stories. Last but not least, our thanks to our editorial and production team on Our Voices. We'll see you again next week with another exciting program. Be sure to continue the conversation on our social media platforms. Until then, thanks for watching.